Okay. All right. So just if you were not aware, we do record these meetings and post them on YouTube. So, yeah. All right. So the first thing in order is note taker. I think this is a new role within our meetings. Does anybody volunteer on taking notes for today?
Sure, I'll do it.
You seem so excited about it.
Let's do it.
All right, to start off, status updates. I personally haven't been focusing on the platform all too much, so I can't speak to that myself. Anybody else have any status updates?
Yeah. Well, I guess we released another version of Pack, so that's out in the wild. And you can actually download it and use it.
What version?
19.0. I guess 19.0.
Congrats on shipping.
Gets easier every time. Hopefully. Until it doesn't.
Did we verify that there wasn't anything in the pipeline broken? Okay.
Everything was delivered to all of the places. I think this is maybe the first time that's happened.
I know.
Everything went through.
That's worth celebrating. Awesome. I mean, in our defense, we deliver to a lot of different platforms. So sometimes it's not even our fault.
Yeah.
All right. Any other status updates?
Sorry,
This isn't
T.
one for me specifically, but Ben went ahead and split up your spec PR, Daniel. And so hopefully we can get that merged in to move forward with that ASCII cache work.
Thank you, Ben, wherever you are. But okay, awesome. Yeah, I think there's already like implementation stuff up on the lifecycle and Pack repos. So
And Anthony, were you gonna add something?
No, I wasn't.
Okay. Nothing of value. I'm teasing. All right, moving on to release planning. I believe we're setting up the milestone for 020. I know that there were a couple things on 019 that didn't get completed. Those will probably be migrated over. There was one thing to maybe call out here for the Tecton pipeline or catalog. That one's still stuck in review. And there's a Tecton hub, which is essentially like, think of Docker Hub, like where you'll be able to look for tasks and pipelines within the Tecton ecosystem. They're adding the support for multiple catalogs. So instead of trying to push this pipeline through, it's already available, right? But just not through the catalog. I'm going to wait and maybe put more effort in us hosting our own catalog for just the Buildpack related tasks and pipelines. And that'll make it a lot easier to maintain and reduce a lot of the toil for the release of further Tecton related work.
Are there any downsides for us hosting our own thing?
No, it's
or what's the trade-offs?
The initial trade-off, the reason why we didn't do it initially was this discovery, right? I did put it in the issue, I could look for it, but basically there's the discovery part of it where the Tecton catalog hosted all of them, right? And so if people went in there, they wouldn't find Buildpacks. Well, now that they're kind of moving to a UI focused one with Tecton Hub and us being able to plug in our catalog into that, the discoverability concerns are, moot now. The other part was kind of the flip side of us being held up on review is that they actually did review stuff. So like it added to a lot of our, I guess, stability. And so now we'll be losing that review process from a lot of the Tecton community or maintainers. But I will say that that has, increasingly gotten slower and more lacking. So I don't see the benefit there as much as it used to be. But open to having those conversations once the RFC goes through, or once I put an RFC to host our own catalog. So from a technical side, it's all just file system based. As long as you follow a certain structure, it'll just catalog it or index it. Cool. Good job on the notes, Anthony. All right. Anything else on release planning? All right, moving on to needs discussions for PAC. Oh, we got a new one, newish one. I'll share my screen real quick and we can take a look at that. I personally haven't seen this.
Yeah, I think I added this in here as like this Linux Foundation guidelines about temporary files. Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like I've never seen this before, and I don't think we follow all this guidance. Right. And really not sure how like important this is. I guess
So
someone's asking for it.
So what is the, I guess, the issue? Is it that PAC is creating temp files and not deleting them afterwards?
Yeah.
Is this just a difference in Podman versus Docker?
That's what I'm trying to gather. I guess I don't know exactly what files we put in the temp directory. Did you find any of those?
No,
And
this is like, I think this is just a Podman issue, right? I guess this is more like how, I don't really know what our support for Podman is like, or how important it is, how much weight we give it, choosing what to work on, so.
I guess I'm having trouble understanding how this is a Podman specific issue. Because we communicate to Podman via the Docker socket, in which case like we don't have access to the file system, right? Unless we're talking about like volumes and stuff. But the volumes are intended to be persisted and that's not a temp directory situation. So I feel like the issue might not be descriptive enough. And it would be nice to call out like what files he's seeing that are in the temp directory. And I was trying to read it, but it seems like builder layers are maybe placed in the temp directory by PAC itself before actually putting them into the container. And we're just not clearing them. And if that's true, and if we're not deleting them after the build, then we probably should be. And maybe that's the discussion that we have to have. But at least for me right now, it's unclear what files specifically we're leaving behind.
Yeah, I think this is just Podman. When you pull a builder down, it dumps everything into a temp directory instead of whatever the regular Docker file system layer layout is, right?
What do you know the sparse tarball? What that is?
I have no idea what that is. But I mean, like, if I'm gonna guess this person's running on, I mean, they're running on a Linux machine, right? They're gonna have like some local file path that each layer gets downloaded to when you're using a daemon. Docker has some conventions about where those are. Podman has different conventions. You get a bunch of layers that end up in this spot, this place that apparently don't get cleaned up. Is that really our concern?
Yeah. So, I mean, for context, this, the person reporting is somebody from Podman.
Red Hat.
Yeah, from Red Hat. He is the one that provided, if I'm not mistaken, a lot of the Podman support. So I think that if it was a Podman related issue, he would be taking care of it. And that's what makes me more inclined to think that it's something that Pack is doing specifically. And as I'm thinking, like when we do, you know, that ephemeral builder, that's the one case where I'm thinking about that where we might be doing something like that.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
So I think, again, it'd be nice to have a little bit more clarification as to what files he's talking about specifically. Or maybe just, you know, digging into it a little bit deeper.
Podman only runs on Linux, so you actually have to have a Linux something, right?
Yep. But we work at VMware, so we have like VMs everywhere. So we're good. All right, I guess it seems like there's an action here for additional clarification or testing before we make any further or have any further discussion.
Yeah.
Does anybody want to take that on?
Yeah, I can just add some comments to this issue. And
That'd be awesome. All right.
What is our policy for supporting Podman, Javier?
Well, I think it's
Best effort.
Sorry, can you repeat that last statement?
Was it best effort? Like we will try our best, but is not officially supported.
I mean, so we support the daemon socket API, right? And so I think that's as far as our support goes. I know that we addressed an issue where it was a hack that the lifecycle was doing that made it incompatible with Podman. And for that particular case, we did fall back to a more standard way of doing it in compliance with, you know, the expectations of the Dr. Daemon behavior. So I think that's really what it is. So yeah, maybe best effort, but I think from an API perspective, I think we're fully Docker API compliant because that's what we use. It's just, yeah, like some hacks might not be as translatable. And I mean, on the plus side, they provided the integration, right? Or the support. So I think that's really good that we didn't have to go and do it ourselves. All right, let's see. So if we've taken care of all that, next we have RFCs. All right, I'll also share my screen on this one. Starting from the bottom, pack cache options. This is something that myself or Steven were supposed to merge in. I know I'm working on an issue creation bot that is kind of taking a lot of my focus, but this should go in and should allow for a lot of work to then be done. Do we already have a PR for this then?
this is just one of the many issues that was recently bumped, and this is the ultimate solution.
Yeah. All right, so that one is up and coming. RFC for Pack Interact and the build visual mode. Anthony, do you have a update on that?
First of all, I still don't know what to do with this interact mode, the previous one. Like I'm fully happy to close it, right, in favor of the newer one as per your instructions. But the visual mode one, the one on the top, again, I'm really just waiting for next steps here. It's as we recall, it's just a more pared down version of you know, the original idea. It's basically not interactive, but it's just purely a visual representation of what you do when Pack is building, right? The idea is it lowers the learning curve for new members. They understand the abstractions, right? In a, you know, in a more engaging way. That's the idea.
Okay, cool. And you have a prototype. If we're thinking next steps, how close is the prototype to actually being implemented? Like, is it production ready?
You mean a prototype for this?
Yeah, like the screencast that we're
Yeah.
watching.
Okay,
It's like-
that is I'm sorry, that is not production ready at all. That is does absolutely nothing to do. That is really just a visual mock-up. Like it, you know, it's a bunch of sleep statements and printing the right colors on the screen. It has absolutely no
I love it. All right. Well, good to know. That being said, I think if we step back to what's necessary, I know I already approved it. It seems like we have 2 other maintainers that we need at least 1 more, would be my statement there. So
Is one of those people Steven of the 2 other people you listed?
let's see. Tell me by hovering. Yep, Stephen and David.
I wonder if I can proxy vote for Steven.
We might need it. But yeah, if David could approve it, I think we'll definitely be fine.
All right, forgive me for speaking out of turn here, but a Big Terrence, are you not a platform maintainer?
I'm not. That was Steven. I mostly started coming because Steven does not come. And there should be someone from the core team who is part of each of these sub teams are involved. I mean, for the most part, I think Javier he's part of basically all the leadership meetings that we have, but I think it's still good to have someone on the core team there. It's probably something we will talk about tomorrow in one of some discussions we're going to have on the core team and leadership.
Isn't it today? Are we talking about different?
Oh no, isn't Summit's tomorrow, right? June 3rd.
Okay, yeah. Yeah. Cool. All right. Oh. All right. So I hear where you're coming from, Anthony. I will try to get on these other individuals and make sure that we get this in as soon as we can. Sound good?
Oh, of course.
Yeah, and then as far as the other one, the drafted one, yeah, feel free if you feel more comfortable closing it, by all means, go for it. Record's always there.
100%.
Okay, let's see. All right, we have something on the agenda for platform support policy. Do you want to talk about that?
I just add this. I asked a question I think Anthony responded to, and I was just curious, not in the specifics of Platform O6, but kind of what is the policy, or I guess like ideal for when Pack I guess supports a platform API when it comes out. I think this kind of goes in line with some of the previous discussions around like documenting what platforms are supported. And I guess for context, like this came up because we implement our own pipeline, similar, I guess, like KPack or whatnot on the Salesforce side for our own platform. And we were supporting using the latest lifecycle. And so we had like Platform O6 as a thing. And then we realized we also tell customers to use Pack, but they can't use Platform O6. And I don't think that's a big deal generally, but it does mean that potentially they could build and run stuff locally that may function a little differently than what is supported on our platform. And obviously we could, I guess, like choose to use an older version of the platform API, but most people on my team that were working on it just kind of assumed Pack supported the latest thing that was released. And I guess we were kind of surprised that it didn't. Again, like not a huge thing, but just more curious on kind of where that stands, if that makes sense.
Yep, that makes sense. Let's see. So I know that the pack specifically works very different than lifecycle as far as release cadence, right? We don't block for completion of a specific API support. So there's that. Historically, we've also gone in with the mindset of supporting N-1, right? Which is supporting the latest version of a platform API and the previous version, and then dropping support for any, I guess, older APIs after that. As far as I'm aware, that may not be encoded anywhere. I do know that this is something that we, recently have discussed, and Dan was working on maybe adding some of that to the release notes, if I remember correctly. I don't know exactly where that effort is. Dan, if you're still there, do you have something to speak on?
Yeah, I have not added this to the release notes.
Okay.
But like in terms of the other part, I think Terrence, you were wondering about, which is just how quickly does Pack actually get some of this stuff out the door. Yeah, be probably good to document this, and then we can start measuring that, or at least hold ourselves more accountable.
Yeah, I think once we have this, compatibility list essentially, then we could start creating sort of strategies for supporting full releases of platform API or any other form of API, right? Where those themselves can become epics. And that way they become a little bit easier to track. Something else that I've also kind of thought about and considering is once we have epics with very defined things that we need to achieve for certain group of tasks, they can easily become projects for mentorship programs, right? And so I think we could leverage a lot of that as well there. So I think just being a little bit more organized in that fashion would yield a lot of really good results. So I guess, Dan, so we don't have you on the hook for producing the release stuff. Maybe just a very quick issue to create what we're trying to achieve would be a nice starting point. Awesome.
How is this, I guess since Natalie's here, on the lifecycle side, they must do something similar, right? For supporting the various APIs as they come out, I guess by the very nature of it being lifecycle. and having to be much more stringent about it. How do you all handle that on that sub team?
Sorry, I confess I was multitasking. Is the question about like how we manage the code, or how is it the release process?
I guess just tracking implementation, not really like managing the code itself. I assume that is, handled however that's best per project. But I wonder if it makes sense, I guess, like when we do spec release planning, to basically create, like when a spec is released, to create milestones or something in the respective projects that we then, like, as a sub team, can then populate the issues based on that spec or whatever. That makes sense.
On the lifecycle side, it's fairly clear cut for us, because we aim to tie each release, at least each minor version, to a API bump. Right now, that is platform and Buildpack API, like they're kind of moving in lockstep, although they don't necessarily have to be. But for us, it's always very clear what needs to go into the next release, because it is just going to be implementing whatever's in the spec.
Yeah, so if I'm not mistaken, a maybe more explicit example would be where, as they're doing their lifecycle release planning, right, they get to also at the same time decide whether certain spec changes should be applied, because then they could foresee whether or not they have the availability to actually implement it within whatever given time frame they desire. And I think that works really well there. But because, let's say, any platform API changes need to be first implemented by the lifecycle, the platforms, and in this case, Pack, don't get that same sort of input, right? Because they're always lagging behind. They need the lifecycle to provide it first, and then Pack can implement it afterwards. So we don't get to, I guess, have as much input as to what set of changes go into the spec for any given platform API version, or any API version that we need to support or integrate with. Did I misspeak there, Natalie, at all?
No, that's totally fair. We've definitely kicked out issues, or at least pushed them to the next spec release because we wanted to ship at a certain time frame. And I think I agree that the platform side, you don't have that same level of freedom.
Yeah, so I think for us, we could discuss whether we want to bulk release, right? Let's say the next upcoming platform API, and say, okay, we're going to try to ship this all together so it's complete, or continue our current pattern, which is kind of like almost best effort for any API. But I think what we're definitely missing is just any form of formal notification of what the state is, right? And so I think two things would help there is, to your point, Terrence, like creating issues out of the spec releases that then point to things that could be implemented, but also on the release notes themselves, just mentioning the state of all the compatibility. Cool. Would that help? I think.
Yeah, I think that helps. I also wonder, like, if the premier platform that is kind of one of the major platforms that we release as part of the project should have input on what goes and does not go into the spec. Like, it makes sense for lifecycle to have the level of control it does, but it also seems like the platform sub team by the name should have some input on. Should also have some input there. Probably not the same level of control that implementation does, but I guess as like a reference point, right? Like platform API 06, which I mentioned was released on March 29th, and it's like June 2nd right now. And so, I do think that the platform team should have input and say on kind of those things as well.
And I mean, if I'm being honest, I feel like there's not a lot of technical challenges as to why we can't hit a certain platform API. I think a lot of it is more on the organizational part, right? On being able to track that set of work. Completely, an aside on something like Tecton, quote unquote, these like simpler platforms. We've chosen to stay a couple platform API versions behind just because the builders themselves haven't updated their support, right? So we're trying to kind of like level set or base set on all the builders' compatibility as well. But that's completely different. So I heard a couple action items there that we could probably track. Sorry, Dan, were you gonna say something?
Oh, I was just gonna say that I think there is like a PR here to support platform API 06 for Pack.
It's what I was
and,
linked to on Slack.
Like, yeah. I don't know what our philosophy is on cutting patch releases, but it feels like, or maybe this is like too much stuff to throw in one, but feels like we should. I agree that this stuff probably should have gone out. Like we were missing 05 and 06, and like I don't even want to look up when 05 was written and finalized because that was probably a long time ago.
Yeah, and on my behalf for at least the Salesforce side, it's not like we don't need an emergency patch release for this platform API thing. It's more of just trying to figure out like what the stance and policy is of kind of what the expectation of when stuff will get supported, and not like we need something done today kind of thing. So I would just patch in the normal set of release cans that Pack's going to do, and that's fine.
Okay.
All right, so I added an action to create epics for APIs as they come out. I'll kind of keep an eye on that, but I'll also relay it to David, who isn't here, just so that A, he's aware of it, and B, hopefully he could, take on some of that burden as well for Pack, and I try to do it for the other platforms. Too many platforms. Cool. All right. Is there anything else left on this topic?
No, I think I'm good there.
Awesome. Thank you for bringing it up. All right. We do have some more time if anybody has anything they'd like to discuss. All right. Well, if there's nothing, then I'll let everybody go. Enjoy the rest of your week and day. See y'all.